Now, I mentioned at the beginning of Mass the word joy, and I have joyful news for you this morning. I have to be very short. So there you go. So you're lucky because we've got many things to do during Mass this morning. So instead of being 45 minutes, I'll just be 43. So anyhow, where will we begin? Well, just very, very briefly, what I normally try to do is pick out a little phrase in the Gospel, and the little phrase that would catch, well, my eye and hopefully catch your ear this morning would be that phrase, the first will be last and the last will be first. I mean, that doesn't make sense, does it? If you're first, you're first. If you're last, you're last. You know, sometimes you're standing in a line at the checkout in the store, and you kind of look at the people in front of you, and he's got a big basket there, and she's got her trolley loaded, so I slip over here to this line, and then you find that the guy was in front of you, he's gone 10 minutes before you, and you're still waiting there. That's the kind of thing. You thought you were going to be first, but you ended up last. What does Jesus really mean? That's the important thing by that. Well, hopefully in a few short sentences, that you got to go down before you go up. Now that goes against everything in ourselves, self. Everything against self, against the ego. Because we all want to be successful. We live in a culture where success seems to be the most important thing. And when you look back on your life, and I can honestly say this from my heart, when I look back on my life, what really matters to me now is my failures. All the times I failed and failed very, very badly. Because but for those failures, I wouldn't be where I am today. So every day of my life, I thank God for my failures. You're probably thinking, is he mad? Well, no, because failures are so important. You never really learn anything from your success except you become more bloated, pride. But you do learn a lot from your failures. And it's called, there's a name for it, it's called the spirituality of imperfection, the spirituality of the wound, Look at Jesus. He ended up hanging on a cross. Can you be more of a failure than that? Not much. I'm glad you agree with me on that point. You can't be much more of a failure than when you end up hanging on a cross. And yet, it was through that he rose from the dead, the resurrection. And St. Teresa called that her little way. A great example of that is St. Francis of Assisi. And you know, a good example too, if ever you look at a skater and he's going from A to B, he doesn't go in a straight line, does he? He goes side by side by side that way. That's the way we go to God. You go 3 steps forward and 2 steps backward. Now, having said that, what I'm doing now is, in my little way, is catechizing you. Because today is the Sunday throughout the United States, it's a Sunday it's catechetical Sunday, catechesis. That's not a word you use every day of your life, is it? If you went and said to somebody tomorrow morning when you went to work, I've been catechized yesterday, you say, oh, was that painful? It's serious. They wouldn't have a clue what you were talking about. Catechesis comes from a Greek word, hard to explain. Catechesis, kata down, and kataklein, sound. Sound down comes from, getting down to basics, if you put it that way. It also means to teach orally. But don't forget, St. Francis of Assisi said, by all means preach the gospel, if necessary, use words. You don't have to use words to let people know about Jesus Christ. Now, I have heard of people and I've met people, and I hope there's nobody here to whom it has ever been said, when somebody someday, I hope somebody has never said to you one day, I never knew you were a Catholic. I never knew you were a Christian. I never knew you believed in God. Now, there's many people who say, I believe in God. There are many, many Catholics, and they're afraid of their life to tell anybody that they are Catholic, that they do believe in God. I hope nobody is here is like that. And when we talk about catechesis, it's not just teachers in school or catechists or necessarily the priest at Mass on a Sunday. All of us are called to be catechists. How? Well, by the way we live and by the way we behave. So again, going back to what I've just said a minute ago, I never knew you were a Christian. I never knew you believed in God. I never knew you were a Catholic. Well, what way are you behaving? Just like everybody else, no different from everybody else. It matters. Stand up and be counted. Let people know you believe in God, that Jesus matters to you. That's important. Very, 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 very important. How do you do that? Just by being loving, by being caring, by not always taking offense so easily, by being willing to forgive, not going around with two enormous chips on your shoulder so that you're well balanced. It's bad enough to have a chip on one shoulder, but I know people, and they give a totally wrong impression. Now, who is the greatest teacher of our present day, more by what he does and how he lives than by what he says? Pope Francis. Isn't he a magnificent example of that? And we catechize and we teach people and give them a love of God by everything we do. So to conclude, the most important thing that I'm going to do this morning is not just the homily, but how I celebrate Mass. Because believe me, I've listened to many priests, and I occasionally just go to Mass, and very often to see how Mass should not be celebrated. And it's painful. It's painful. I see many priests, and that attitude at the altar is appalling. It's just, they absolutely rush through the Mass. Get it over with. The place is on fire. I've got to get out of here quick. That's the impression you got. And the words that come from their lips don't seem to mean anything. The words of the Mass are beautiful, but they've got to come from the heart. And that's very, very important. And I've seen many a homily or a little sermon ruined, demolished by the way the priest after that celebrates Mass. So that's why I love to celebrate Mass. And that's so important. That's the greatest example I can give you, I think, not necessarily what I say here.